Hi all and welcome to our early access preview of Nightingale. We finally had some hands-on time with the game and now have a good first impression of the actual gameplay, how the world feels and what we potentially like and dislike about the game. A quick disclaimer before we start. The build we played on was not the final early access version, and by the time the game launches, features and items might have been tweaked, improved or expanded upon, so keep this in mind. Now, if you're into survival, crafting and building, Nightingale might have been on your radar for a while. The game is set in a Victorian gas lamp fantasy world, and while its genre might be reminiscent of steampunk, there's generally a greater focus on magic. It is PvE only and can be played solo or co-op with up to 5 other players. That doesn't mean you can't have more friends and meet with other players in Nightingale. It's only the limit for how many players can play together on one realm at any given time. And if you were worried, there is a third-person mode for everyone who doesn't like to or can't play in first person. By the way, we didn't have any prior access to the game, so our impressions here are based on the first few hours one would experience in Nightingale, and it pretty much reflects us being thrown into a totally new world. Let's start with character creation. While certainly befitting the style of the game, the character presets are most likely a matter of taste. We are honestly not too big fans of the characters, but the character creation system allows for extremely in-depth customization, and it's possible to tweak a character significantly and give them a different look. We looked at all available options and clicked through all sliders without spending too much time, and this alone took us already over 30 minutes. Not every slider worked and not all customization options were available in our version, but it sounds like this will be fixed for launch. One thing we didn't find at all though were options to change body type or height, which might put some players off. Once the character is finalized, you can also select the game's difficulty level and gear loadout, and then the tutorial begins. Charismatic Fagite Puck has you complete various simple tasks to teach you the basics of crafting, survival and how realm travel works. As with many survival games, there is hunger and exhaustion, but also weather that can affect your character, as well as a unique stat called Hope. Once the foundations for your journey in Nightingale are established, your real adventure can begin. The tutorial leads you to an abeyance realm, where you can claim a piece of land and build your very own base, or estate as it's called in Nightingale. And this is also where you can start to play with others, if you wish. Since we are a team of 2, we decided to team up and join the same realm. This can be done via the party and social interface. Players will generally have the same overarching progression goals, given either by Puck or other NPCs you meet in the world. How you accomplish these tasks in which order or time frame is down to you though, and quest progression is character-based. If you want to spend more time building and gathering resources, or simply exploring, you can do so, but you will have to complete certain tasks sooner or later if you want to advance further. Not following our own advice, we ended up building the cliché of a boxy starter build. Let's focus on building a proper base later. We just need a place for shelter, dumping resources and crafting. Building is blueprint based, and it doesn't matter who lays down the outlines for a building, crafting stations or furniture. Anyone can help completing the build by contributing resources. Crafting stations, beds and storage containers can all be used together. But do keep in mind that some crafting stations might only show you recipes if you have the knowledge of that said station and recipes within. At least it felt like that from the limited time we had to experiment. Beyond that, we remember that it was said in the past that you would be able to control access settings for your estate, like who can edit your buildings, access your storage and so on. But we don't recall having seen any such options in the build we played. For now, this is simply controlled by only inviting players to your realm you want to give access. Anyone else won't be able to join at random. While we only unlocked the first two rather basic building sets and are usually not the biggest fan of blueprint style crafting, based on the various building sets that were shown in teasers and trailers, as well as the decorations and such, it seems like Nightingale has a quite solid building system with a lot of customization options. There is, however, a structure limit, at least on the abeyance realm, and that seems to be shared between players. There are various numbers, including this one, which seems to be a limit per structure, but we are not 100% sure what it includes. It seems to be building pieces and placed items, but during placement and building, the number was sometimes inconsistent. We did ask the team for a clarification after our session, but got no answer in time for this video going live. That leads us to crafting in general. There's a lot of complexity to crafting, which might be a good thing or a turn-off for some. Most items are made of several components, which in turn require several stations. So simply making that one tool or station might involve an entire chain of processes and materials. What's interesting is that many items can be upgraded and enhanced, and one recipe can give you different or better results. Meaning you don't have a gazillion recipes, but the possibility to craft better items or items with different stats and bonuses depending on which resources you use. One key factor for progression is the level of your equipment rating, which can be increased by crafting better gear and upgrading it. Crafting stations can also be augmented with traits, depending on specific items that are placed in their vicinity. This adds yet another level of depth to crafting, but for beginners it can easily be overwhelming. In our play session, we learned new crafting recipes by purchasing them from the essence traders or unlocking them in the world. It also seems possible to find some of the recipes that are sold at essence traders. So if you get lucky, you might unlock some without having to spend essences. By the way, essence is one of the core resources in Fey realms and can be extracted from most resources and items, found as loot drops or as rewards from environmental puzzles and points of interest. You can also use magic abilities in Nightingale. However, those are always tied to your tools and weapons, and your character can't cast any of them without them. So it's not abilities your character has, but your gear that's imbued with them. Then there's the whole system of procedurally generated realms you can open. This is Nightingale's main feature, and the ability to open and explore new realms based on a combination of realm cards is certainly intriguing. While it sounds like there could be endless replayability, we feel it will really depend on how many different realm card options the developers will introduce, and how varied the random encounters you can find in these realms will be. For now, there are only 3 biome realm cards: Swamp, Forest and Desert. These can be combined with minor and major cards that influence the difficulty, weather, resources, creatures and more. On the few realms we explored, there was usually always a new trader and an NPC, several puzzles and bigger and smaller points of interest, ranging from easy to challenging boss fights. Everything felt new and fresh, but after a while even the most randomized puzzles will likely be the same kind of puzzles you can encounter. It remains to be seen if Nightingale will manage to keep us engaged and wanting to explore realm after realm after realm, something which can only be judged after spending a lot more time with the game. While not a review and a final build, let's briefly touch base on sound and graphics. In our eyes, the sounds and effects feel fine, neither epic nor bad. The realm's biome vistas are awesome and the world generally feels alive and immersive. On the topic of textures, we didn't feel our characters looked as detailed as in the creator, and even clothing, gear and mobs often felt a bit low-res or lacked depth. Finally, while we have heard it's been drastically improved over the last year, gathering feedback and animations still felt unsatisfying to us. Other features we had a chance to try out were the NPC survivors you can recruit, fishing, and the various tools you can use throughout your adventures. For example, the simple umbrella lets you glide when jumping from heights, and the climbing pick lets you scale walls and buildings. Both drain a lot of stamina, but we are sure once you upgrade your gear, things will get a lot more versatile and useful. Then there's a spyglass that lets you spot creatures and NPCs at a far distance, and we expect to find a lot more useful gimmicks down the line. On that topic, one major drawback with so many tools is the limited space on your shortcut bar. We really hope they introduce more ways to switch quickly between various items. Both NPC recruitment and fishing felt still very rudimentary. Recruited survivors follow you around and can help with tasks. That can be gathering resources, fighting, or refueling your workstations. Unfortunately, you can't give them specific tasks or order them to stay back or behave in a specific way, something we hope will still be expanded upon throughout early access. For now, they simply use the tool you equip them with and, at least in this preview version, refuel your workstation with even the best of your resources. Unfortunately, container permissions for survivors weren't working as intended yet. By the way, if you play with others, loot that drops or that's found in random chests throughout the realms is not shared. Whoever picks up essences or loots a chest first gets the content. However, more important rewards from solving puzzles and other points of interest are given to all players. A last note in regards to NPCs, tutorial pop-ups, journal and codex entries. There's a lot of info to be found in-game. With that we mean hints at what or who you can find in the realms, how tools, stations or even game mechanics work. However, we personally found everything very text-heavy and not as easy to digest. Looking at some of our footage, we sometimes found that there was actually a helpful tutorial hint that helped explaining certain things. But in the midst of playing or even fighting, it was often hard to register certain entries or even read them fast enough, so it's easy to miss a lot of details the game actually explains. And while we understand that the devs wanted to make the UI match the setting, we do find the text font not necessarily the easiest to read. If you aren't crazy about lore and love to devour every little story reference there is, the text-heavy nature of the game might be a minus, but if you are, you might love it of course. All in all, there's a solid foundation for an intriguingly different survival game, but we feel there's still a lot of work needed. Summarizing our first impressions, we'd say there are several unique features and ideas with a lot of potential, like the realm card crafting and the realm travel system, the in-depth crafting system, the unique setting, and the potential to expand the game with unlimited new realm options, creatures and more. However, we also think that the UI felt overall clunky and often unintuitive. The crafting, while potentially very advanced, could feel overwhelming and cumbersome. Combat often felt clumsy, and NPC movements unnatural or goofy. Oh, and we are simply not a fan of the character models, but spending more time with the character creator might remedy this. We think the game could have done with more development time before launching into early access, and more casual players who simply want to jump in and play might easily get overwhelmed or frustrated. However, for us personally, there's still enough that makes us want to explore and find out more. So if the setting and slightly more advanced features sound attractive to you, you might want to give it a go when it launches into early access on the 20th of February for PC on Steam and the Epic Games Store.